Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the PA UK network. I'm your host Paul Rook, and tonight's show I'm joined as always by the stupendous Kerry and Richard. Hello guys.
Hello.
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 How
are you today?
Hot and bothered,
yeah,
I think is the
frazzled.
expression.
Oh no, the weather's terrible, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, we're just sort of like sitting here, just sort of. Ooh. But we've got a show to do, I suppose. So let's get cracking.
Yeah. And last week, I think Kerry made a bit of a boo-boo, didn't she?
No, never.
Just a little
Yeah,
bit.
she did.
Never. Me make a mistake? Never.
Yeah, I believe it had something to do with a mummified monk, I believe.
What, the one that's still alive after 1,000 years being old?
Yeah, that was amazing. Because Kerry's now been doing some research on this subject for the purposes of tonight's show, because we're talking about relics. So, Kerry, what did you find out about this mummified monk after 1,000 years? Still alive and kicking, is he?
No, he's funny enough, he's not alive at all. There's no scientific evidence to make sure he's alive, to say he's alive whatsoever. In fact, he mummified himself through meditation, basically. So what happens is they get themselves into a meditative state and basically starve themselves to death. And in that process, they become mummified. So, like, the monks that sort of he was working with sort of, like, put him inside a statue, basically. It's what it is.
Well, they revered him for about 200 years, but then I think they felt they needed to protect him a bit.
Just a little bit.
More, didn't they? Yeah, so they encased him in a Buddha statue.
Yes.
So,
as you do.
So he was very much still on this plane, physically anyway.
Physically, he's definitely on the plane, but spiritually and consciously, he's gone. He has actually moved over, and there is no living remnants inside his body whatsoever, no matter what I said last week, everybody. So, yes, I was wrong. But this is a fascinating concept, though, when you think about this. Now, he's perfectly preserved. His little body is perfectly preserved inside this statue. It was discovered in the 1990s. When the statue itself went in for restoration work, and they discovered that this body, or this mummified monk, is inside there, and it's something that they do apparently. I can't think I would be able to focus on anything that much for that long.
Well, I was actually quite surprised that this was actually a practice, sort of self-mummification. I always thought it was something that was performed after death, but to actually sort of decide to actually do it yourself is odd. But I suppose it's the ultimate test of piety, I suppose you would call it, for Buddhists to actually do, because they are famed for their meditation techniques.
Basically, it's a self-preparation as well. They go through a self-preparation for this, where they they fast and take little water, and so they go into a trance, and then they go so deep into a trance that eventually they starve to death. So, but they're not, I suppose, aware that they're starving to death because they're so deep in a trance. And then, of course, once they're dead, their body's dead, then apparently 200 years he was worshipped for, or revered, or whatever you want to call it. And then, because he obviously started to deteriorate, they then he was put inside a statue. And he's incredibly well preserved, this mummified monk, which is they say that this is extraordinary, and it's the only known example in the world of that. So I have a suspicion that he was probably somebody incredibly important at the time.
Yeah, I'm sort of going along that sort of line of thought, or he was revered simply because he went through this process. This process was probably spoken about in theory in the monasteries, but this guy perhaps was the first and only one to ever actually do this.
Yeah, maybe he was, or maybe it is more common practice and they just don't put them in Buddhas. Do you know what I mean? Inside a statue. Maybe.
Or there is a lot of Buddha statues out there with monks inside. Who knows?
Who knows, indeed. When you read about this, it's an incredible piece of, well, so the concepts this brings up is just astonishing. He isn't alive. That's what I stated last week. I said he's still alive. Clearly he's not. And what they did when they put him into the statue was they took samples, the experts went and took samples, and they actually discovered that the monk's organs had actually been removed and replaced with wads of paper written with Chinese characters. So he has actually gone through some form of process as well before they put him into the statue. So, yeah, there is no signs of life, everybody, which is what I said last week. Which the boys all week have been relishing this moment.
Well, we will give you that little woo-woo moment, my dear. We all like a bit of woo-woo now and every once in a while.
Well, you know, just shows you have to look, you have to research things before you say things sometimes. But no, it's an incredibly fascinating situation. And so once he's died and stopped breathing, they dried him out a bit further by putting him close to the fire. And they think that this was somewhere near China or Tibet. Is what they think,
I should imagine so. It does make sense, sort of, especially that sort of climate as well would be much more suited, you know, because you think about that region being high up in the Himalayas and stuff like that. So perhaps the climate was very inducive for this process to actually take place as well.
Oh, who knows? Who knows the thing behind it? But, you know, he actually becomes, I mean, we're talking relics today, but, you know, a living person, while he was in that trance state, probably would have become a living relic at the time, obviously, before he passed over by starvation. You know, he probably would have become... I wonder if, you know, we see this with, you know, the guards outside Buckingham Palace and stuff, and then tourists come along and, poke them and stuff to try to get them to... move or react. I wonder if they did that to him.
Yeah, can you imagine it?
Give him a poke.
They just come down down the stairs every day and just poked him.
At what point did they realise he was dead? I was going to say, at what point did they realise he'd actually passed over by starvation?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Probably after 200 years when they sort of... When they thought,
he's deteriorating a bit. We don't think he's going to come back alive now. I mean, what point? The whole concept is fascinating from not just the physical, the practical side of things, but what mental state do you have to get yourself into to actually enter into that deeper trance that you... I mean, God, I said before, I can't even go 12 hours without eating, let alone bloody, God knows how long to starve yourself to death. I mean, bearing in mind, they're probably on a small diet anyway. They're probably not, you go, if you was to fast now, you would get incredibly hungry and maybe even get lightheaded, headaches, pass out, that kind of thing, because your body's used to the amount of food you eat, right? They don't have that excess of diet like we do, the Tibetan monks or whoever this person was. So he's on a meager
Yeah, because they would have. I think Tibetans and they rely on sort of charity, don't they, to be sort of like the locals giving them food and stuff like that. But sort of back then and even today, sort of in some of these sort of places, you just eat sort of when the food's available, and that's about it. But as you said, Kerry, there's no excess over there. Whereas us, I mean, we eat when we don't need to, really. If you think about it.
Yeah. So for him to go into a starvation state, like I say, for us, we'd know we were hungry. But for him, into that trance state, would he recognise he was hungry because he's so deep in a trance? Like I said, it was like taking yourself beyond the physical. I mean, I do meditations and that, but I'm always aware of my bodily needs.
Yeah, well, there are stories and stuff, and even today, and the ones in the Himalayas sort of monasteries, they do go out and stay out overnight and meditate on the mountainsides and stuff. And those temperatures drop below zero at night, and they sort of come trotting back in the morning and all okay by the looks of it, So there's certainly something to a deep meditative state. They certainly are managing to slow their bodies down somehow.
But we see this with modern, like, magicians. Don't I say magicians? Mentalists, I think they're called more than anything else, aren't they? Like Darren, and not Darren Brown, the other one, the weirdo. The one that stayed in a box and then got buried alive and then did the ice challenge, and he does various varying... David Blaine.
Yeah, he's the one.
He's the one. Yeah. He can do... puts his body through extremes, doesn't he?
Yes, you don't know and how much of that is the illusion, though, do you? I mean, those sort of mentalist type sort of magicians, they really, they do my head in watching them. I think, how do they do it? How do they do it? They're very good at what they do, but is it all illusion, or are they actually sort of learnt some of these techniques? Who knows?
At least we know the techniques are out there.
Yeah. They can either be generally reached or sort of, well, to a certain extent, imitated or faked. Who knows?
Who knows, indeed. But we're not actually talking about that. We needed to put the record straight, because they say that all week they've been relishing this moment of Kerry being wrong for once. Well, doesn't happen often. Just saying. That's all I'm saying. Paul has literally been jumping up and down going, come on, record the show. Let's record the show. Let's record the show. But this brought us on to, through, in the background, we were talking about this monk, and this led us down the road of, basically he becomes a holy relic. And then that led us down a whole different rabbit hole of relics. This ties so much into belief system, doesn't it?
Yes, I've often been interested in the relics. Sort of like you go through the lists of sort of like relics, and you sort of think, oh, come on, I'm personally in the camp that there's no sort of physical sort of relics left from the times, especially biblical times, but you can see the need for relics. There was certainly a tangible need for the faithful to revere relics and to go and seek out supposed relics.
Paul?
Yeah, no, I'm not too keen on some of the ideas of what we're going to be talking about later for the relics, but I can understand. It's almost like someone who collects artifacts, or even as a hobby collecting things. I mean, I'm a big fan of Star Trek, so I would buy Star Trek memorabilia. But if someone's really into their religion in a big way, then to own something that could have belonged to, I don't know, one of the saints, or, even one of the biblical characters of the time, to own something like that for them would be something equally as fascinating as my Star Trek memorabilia. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like that for me. I mean, I'm not really into the whole religion stuff. I mean, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to religion, but I'm not one for like collecting the baseball cards on religious people. I mean, so.
I think going back to medieval times, though, when they had a church or a cathedral or something like that built, they would like to put that to somebody or something, like the Saint of St. Paul or I don't know, whoever, Virgin
certainly.
Mary. And to sanctify it further, they would want a relic that they could focus their attention on as to why their church is like the best church. Well, firstly, it attracts people, pilgrims, who would want to come and like worship, and it gives people almost like a sense of being special. We're super special because we've got this and we've got that, and this is, I mean, we found loads and loads of different types of relics, and they seem to fall into two camps, which was the physical, which was literal bits of the person or the person, or associated. So it would be things like that the person had touched or used or affected whilst they were alive. And there was two very different camps, but people to this day revere these, something something amazingly, actually. It's a crazy thing. And these things have sacred. They're so sacred. The belief system that they have special powers in their own right is so apparent. That's why people go to these churches and that, to get just a glimpse, to pray to that relic. And when we talk about some of these relics, you're going to kind of go, what the hell? But people do, and they absolutely revere them and have such a belief system in the relic itself that it will do what it needs to do for me, or the village, or the, you know, whatever it be, the purpose, the intention. And when it happens, it just increases like the mystique of the relic, doesn't it? It's like crazy. But there was quite a trade in this in the medieval ages. You know, when we was looking into that, there was actual people who traded in holy relics that actually they would sell the same relics to several different churches, and because they never seemed to talk to each other, they all bought into it. It was quite a lucrative business, I feel.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, and as I was talking to you during the week, I would have loved to have been a purveyor of religious relics if I went back to medieval times. That's the job I would want.
See, the first time I ever encountered that particular thing was in an episode of Blackadder, which is a UK TV show in the 70s and 80s. And there was actually an episode where Edmund Blackadder, the character, he became the Archbishop of Canterbury. And he started selling Jesus's fingers. And he said, like, oh, I've got like this Jesus finger, and Baldrick, his sidekick, turned around and said, oh yeah, I thought they only come in packs of 8. It was very satirical, you know. It was quite a funny show.
Well, there's a lot of people and throughout history have looked upon the relic sort of trade as sort of, you know, pretty much for what it is, something that's not exactly kosher. You know, it always has attracted the charlatans and stuff like that, you know.
The initial scam.
Yeah, it was the initial scam, really.
Yeah.
It definitely sounds like it, you know, when you think about if you added all the pieces of like the cross or pieces of this, that, or the next together, then how many heads of St. Paul are there? You know what I mean? When you look at it. And you have like this competition between churches as well, saying they've got it. No, I've got it. But no, I've got it. You know what I mean? So it becomes a bit of a mishmash, doesn't it? Now, but whatever, people believe these things. I mean, one of the main things was pieces of the true cross. Now, the true cross is the cross that Jesus actually got crucified on. And nowadays there are still several pieces with a legitimate claim to the title, right? But back in the Middle Ages, if you put all the pieces of the true cross together, you probably would have made a boat kind of thing.
Well, I think there was a reference to some bishop saying it probably would have made 3 boats.
Yeah, there was a lot of bits of the true cross,
floating
everybody.
around.
Yeah, lots of bits of the true cross. Now, one such fragment is actually supposed to be kept in the city of Rome, and other bits are in countries of Israel, Spain, Belgium, all over the place, right? But they're not big bits. We're not talking like a whole leg of it, you know what I mean? Or not a leg of it, that's really bad terminology, really bad.
A leg of cross.
A leg of cross.
Yeah.
What the hell am I going on about? You know what I mean? We're not talking big chunks, we're talking like little fragments, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, they were little slivers, and I believe the one in Rome, which the Vatican's, I believe that's actually encased at the top of the obelisk, which they have in the middle of the Vatican Square in Vatican City. I believe that's actually in there. But but as you say, it's there are loads of bits. But you think about it, it's easy to replicate, and all you need is splinters of wood.
But then it inspires faith, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you turn around and say, yeah, I've got a part of the true cross, it's there on display, everyone can see it, people will go, look at it, and it would inspire them to stay in that faith.
Well, you know what? I was thinking about this. I was thinking, right, If it is the cross, if it is the true cross of where Jesus was crucified, there'll be bodily fluids on it somewhere. On one of the fragments,
yeah.
on one of the fragments, there would be bodily fluids on there, right?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Even if
Right.
it's sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how DNA sampling works and how old it is before it deteriorates beyond recognition. I don't know, but wouldn't they be able to take a DNA sample?
No, because all they'd be able to do is determine that there's DNA on there. They've got
Yeah,
nothing to
'cause-
compare it to.
Yeah, I'm not too au fait on the DNA extraction process, but you're looking at very minute samples of the alleged cross, and if it was the true cross, it would be over 2,000 years old.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the chances are that there probably isn't any DNA on there anymore anyway. But I don't think, because they've got nothing to compare it to. It's like a crime scene. If they take DNA from a crime scene, they still need a suspect to compare it to.
Yeah, and I suppose with all these pieces of cross flying about, then they've been touched by so many people.
Exactly. So you'd be able to you might be able to take DNA off it.
Yeah, you can probably
without
get
having Jesus there to go, yeah, there you go, have some on my DNA. They can't compare it.
Oh, okay, then that's a mute point. Thinking about it, but I was
But no,
thinking
it's
you might be able to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That might be another
Well,
stupid
if they
thing
can
I've said.
if they can clone dinosaurs, maybe they could do that with Jesus.
But you tend to find with these relics, which churches still hold, they are very reluctant, if at all, to actually give these relics up for examination. I mean, I know they've done work on the Turing shroud a bit, but, they had to fight to actually sort of get that done, because when you DNA, when you carbon date something, the process it goes through actually destroys the sample.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
this is...
But
anyway.
the point is, for it to be a relic, that people have got to have faith in it.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you've got faith in it, you don't need to have it tested.
No, you don't need to have it proved.
No.
You've got the miracles
Take it on blind
associated with it and stuff like that, and that's all the proof the faithful really need.
That's true. That's very true. But most of these pieces of this cross are actually supposed to come from Constantinople, after the city was captured and sacked by the Fourth Crusade in 1204. Now, the pieces are supposed to have travelled widely through Europe, and records of this journey go back to 359 AD.
Ooh.
Which is quite a long time, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
I think if there was the possibility of any cross associated with Jesus, the Knights Templar would have taken it.
The Knights Templar, they always crop up.
So,
Well, it's
They've
just that
got a
they
lot
were
of
there to
stuff,
protect. They were there to protect religious artifacts. So it just stands to reason, if they've got like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail and all them bits and pieces and stashed them away, they would have had the cross as well, wouldn't they?
the thing is, though, when Jesus was crucified, he had a following, quite a big following at the time, right? But his sacredness, I suppose, has only grown throughout the years. He, at the time, would he have had the same reveration that he has now? Or would it have just... It wouldn't, would it? So the artifacts that are associated with him wouldn't have had the importance that we put on them now.
No, these sort of artifacts and stuff were only sought probably, as is written here, about 300 years after the events, when Christianity was starting to sort of take hold and people were starting to show interest in it and convert to Christianity. That's when people were saying, let's try and sort of go back and find some of the original artifacts. But these artifacts that they talk about, whether they existed at all, it's beside the point. They really sort of, people wanted to sort of like go back and try and resurrect the story physically as well with these artifacts.
Because if you think about it, if you look even in our modern history, say we wanted to find an authentic artefact that, say, belonged to Hitler. We'd heard about, I don't know, a chair he'd sat in, for example. Now, to find just that chair that Hitler had sat in and get that verified that that was the chair, that's difficult. And that's how many years?
Yeah, you're only looking at 75 odd years, aren't you, after the event?
We're looking at a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
For a cross he was crucified on, which was either reused several times by various, once they took the body down, they may well have crucified several more people on the same cross, who knows. There's nothing to say they took the cross down and got rid of it. They might have done because of who he was. I
can see that. I very much doubt it. I mean, they're quite pragmatic, the Romans, and, they would have recycled, reused, and they crucified a lot of people. So there's a lot of sort of like abandoned sort of rubbish tips with probably old crosses in them.
But we do have, even now, a big fascination on relics, and not particularly old ones either. I mean, as you said, like the chair was sat on by Adolf Hitler. I mean, we've got so many artifacts in museums, and even some of the haunted museums that are coming up now. They're just modern day relics. We just relish in the history that comes with them, and we enjoy seeing something that was associated to someone like Adolf Hitler, for example. Maybe not him, but Winston Churchill's war room, for example.
Yeah.
Particularly for the English, and I'm sure the Americans have got the equivalent of, I don't know, Richard Nixon's bunker somewhere. I don't know, but. Yeah, it's just people are fascinated by history, and relics, ancient relics, is just one part of that. And we've got the modern day relics.
Yeah, there's certainly a precedent there, and there's certainly a need in the human psyche for something tangible to go and see, to go and look at, to go and touch. There's certainly that. I mean, and we all love a good museum, and what are they? Just huge reliquaries at the end of the day.
But there isn't the reverence. There isn't that reverence or that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Placed on them like you have with
no, but
Holy Relics.
It's almost people also got a need to connect as well. I mean, I remember going to. I quite like the old steam trains, and I went to York Train Museum. I can't remember what it was called, the proper name for it, the Railway Museum or something in York.
Yeah.
And they had the Mallard there, which was the fastest land speed record holder for a steam train. And just to go there and touch it, because you could touch it, it was like, wow, that's absolutely fascinating. That's amazing. And I had someone with us that weren't really into that, and they were like, it's a train. It's not just a train, it's the Mallard.
Yeah, so
and they just couldn't grasp that. But then, I know that they've got a fascination in murderers and like the psychology behind all the murders and stuff. And when we went to the True Crimes Museum in Hastings, she was doing exactly the same, but like chairs that people had been executed on, and I'm like, how's that any different to my Mallard?
Yeah.
But isn't it to do? Is it okay then? Let's look at the person. I mean, Jesus is like one of those historical characters that is so spiritual. It's a spiritual thing rather than a thing. A material thing.
Yeah,
he is the embodiment of spirituality, isn't he? Or
because he possibly died on that cross, and you've got to hold that belief. It's just that extra connection that you might get with him. You feel a little bit closer to them.
I think it goes beyond hero worship, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does a little bit, but it's still the same. It is a bit of hero worship, but just because you've got something of theirs, or you can touch something they owned or sat on or used or whatever, you just get that little bit. You just feel that little bit closer to someone.
So it's a connection with a person, not a thing. Even though we focus that on a thing that they touched, in regards, say, for example,
it's a representation, isn't it? I mean, a relic, could be anything from like, I don't know, a finger bone to, I don't know, his wig that he used to wear. I don't know. It could be anything. But as long as it's associated to that person,
yeah.
And the more personal it is, so the finger bone would be like the ideal relic.
So the relic then becomes a representation of their qualities,
a
focus for the qualities that they embodied. Like with Jesus, he obviously, Son of God, everybody. Can't get much more beefier than that, can you?
Well, yeah, and people would believe if you go to an associated relic, say, of Jesus, be it a part of the true cross, I mean, sort of, and you can understand why the faithful who are sick would go there, because Jesus was famed for healing the sick. They would want that, that is the closest they can actually get to him as a person.
Yeah.
Apart from actually meeting the person in the flesh.
Well, that's it. I mean, going back to the whole Star Trek thing, because I'm into actually, Doctor Who. There's my right. I've actually been to the Doctor Who exhibition a couple of times, and I've flown the TARDIS. I'm well pleased with that.
It's not the same. I'm going to disagree, because in regards to a holy relic, it hits a different part of your psyche than a hero worship on.
Well, no, you could, because the Doctor was like, they actually filmed the episode, like all the TARDIS stuff, at the place where I took part in that exhibition. But for me to be there on the same set and everything, you just feel that little bit closer to the character. So it is the same thing, just from a different angle.
It evokes the same emotions, is where you're getting at, isn't it? Because if you meet the superstar that you idolise, so say, I don't know, for me, Johnny Depp, right? I meet Johnny Depp, I'd be a dribbling mess on the floor. I wouldn't be able to form a coherent sentence. I'd be like, oh my God, Johnny, kind of thing.
But then if you went to I think it's Disneyland, that they got the Pirates of the Caribbean experience or whatever, and if Johnny Depp was there and you went there for your experience, that would just be perfect for you, wouldn't it?
No.
I'll tell you what, let's turn this on, Kerry. How did you feel when you went to Harry Potter World?
Oh, no, see, if you're talking... No, none of that. It wipes it everywhere. When I went to Madonna in concert, now I've idolised that woman for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. When I got the tickets, I cried. I couldn't talk about the experience without crying. Now, I'm a very level-headed, rational kind of girl. I don't do this thing, believe it or not. Yeah. Normally. I don't do the cryy, hero worshipy type thing. I was crying. When she came out on stage, I burst out crying. I was literally...
But that's actually meeting the person. That's a little bit different.
No, I think...
To maybe going somewhere and buying one of her dresses.
But anything to do with that would be, for me, the ultimate in regards to... That is, oh my God. Do you know what I mean? Harry Potter, no, yeah, I love the films, don't get me wrong, brilliant. Loved it, loved the experience, but not to the level I felt with someone like Madonna, for example, because she'd had such an impact on me.
Met her,
I haven't met her in the flesh.
We're actually talking about meeting the person, and that's totally different to owning a relic of theirs. So if, for example, you became in possession of one of her dresses, for example, would that not make you feel a little bit more closer and connected to her?
No, I don't think so. I'd be pleased I owned it. I'd treasure it, but I wouldn't worship it. Not like in the same way people go into a church to have a holy relic. But isn't it then we go back to the point of how much that person and their actions have affected your life. I mean, Jesus, like I say, Son of God, affected so many people for his way of his spirituality and his teachings, and inspire his inspiration for people, and still does to this day. To this day, you see people convert into faith. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
there is something to be said for that over a normal, everyday
worship,
hero worship.
Yeah, so having worship is Jesus's thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, but we're not for the Madonna thing. It's not about worship. It's just about someone that
It's just
you.
about acquisition. I've got something that person
Yeah,
owned.
exactly.
For
But
me,
why would you have that? Is it because you would feel a little bit connected to her because you've got one of her dresses? Do you see what I'm
no,
saying? It's not
no.
about worshipping her.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get what you're saying, and I'm saying for me, that's not really that important because she's just a pop star, and just because she's affected my life because of how she has. Do you know what I mean? Been and shown the world that women are empowered and sexual beings, and it's not wrong to be that way, and all the things that she represents. I don't feel that anybody can do that to what we've got today, to what they would have done for Jesus.
No, Jesus is on a different level.
Or their
different stuff.
apostles, or anything like that. So when we compare it to hero worship, like a pop star, or an object like a steam train, or whatever it be, it's totally different because it hits you on a psychological level, on a completely different level. This is sacred, this is holy, this is something that is so spiritual that it's beyond. And yes, it is still representative of that energy in the same way. So there are parallels to it, but this takes it to a completely different level.
Yeah.
If we actually was able to have a piece of the true cross of Jesus, firstly on a basic level, yeah, this absolute, if we could prove it, is so fundamentally important. We can't prove it.
They're not going to prove it because
No.
they won't have them tested.
Well, you could, like we've just said, how can we prove it anyway?
Yeah, you
at the
can't
end of the
prove it.
day, because it is so many years, thousands of years old, or hundreds of years old, or however many years old it is. I mean, going back to the true cross, I mean, we don't even know if there was a real person called Jesus. We think there is because it's in the book and he's got this teaching and he's just an amazing person. But actually, we don't really know if there was a real live and kicking Jesus. It's only because the Bible tells us so that we think that.
I think it would have been pronounced Jesus or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But don't argue that point, because at the end of the day, it's a book written that was a collaboration between people to bring all the faiths together under one banner under the Roman Empire.
And it was written a few hundred years after as well.
Exactly. So we don't actually know definitively that Jesus was a real person. It could be a personification of several people.
Yeah.
You know, so we can't even... we only know that because the Bible tells us so. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
there is a belief system in him as a person, but ultimately, and I'm not being disrespectful to anybody who's got a belief. I would never disrespect someone's belief system, but it's a belief system in a mythological person, effectively, because we can't prove it. But that faith in itself and his teachings are incredibly important, have been across the globe. That one person has affected the entire belief system of the globe, to some level. Because I got brought up, C of E, Church of England, yeah? Now, we all know the origins of the C of E. That's a relatively modern one, right?
Yeah,
Tudor times. Yeah, from Tudor times,
more or less.
Effectively, still believes that Jesus was walking on this earth, and I've got that belief system because that's what I got brought up in my education system. A Catholic will have a belief system, believes in Jesus, got a Bible, blah, blah, blah. Still the same story. And there are parallels in every religion in stories we're going through. We know this. Yeah.
Yes,
Regardless of what religion it is, we can find that. It still comes down to an iconic character walking this earth, having a massive spiritual effect on the collective.
Yeah. I mean, with like the Christians in particular and the Bible, there are so many offshoots of Christianity. As you said, you've got Church of England, you've also got the evangelists. And I'm sure you've got plenty others, and it's all down to different interpretations of the same book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly Christianity certainly has sort of schismed, I think they call it, when it sort of fractures into so many denominations. They're called. I think Christianity. I think there's as many as 30,000 different denominations of the same principal faith. So. And some of them don't get on very well with each other. So,
no, exactly,
but that's incidental. When we're talking about faith, regardless of where that's focused, it's the intention of faith towards somebody having that spiritual effect on a massive collective. So what they've done and what they said is all incidental. When you're focusing that towards a relic that you believe was either from them directly as a person, they're physical, or an associated thing, or even down to a saint or an apostle that was connected to that main figure, it is absolutely incredible. But one thing I would say, a lot of the relics that we were looking at were actually mainly Catholic or, Jesus related.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we were looking at Tibetan monks, their belief system, they look at something like the monk inside a statue of Buddha. Do you know what I mean? But when we couldn't find any specific relics other than idols, which again is different, to do with Buddha. We didn't find like the loincloth of Buddha.
No, I mean certainly Buddhism seems to rely more on sort of, sort of like there doesn't seem to be a want or a craving for actual physical evidence. It's more internal, isn't it? It's more sort of like an internal development through meditation and stuff like that. That's what that faith seems to concentrate on more, whereas Christianity, it has always sort of wrestled with itself as regards, is this story sort of true? And there've always been people, and there's been a big movement of people out there and presenting stuff to say it is true.
So it's a focus on a materialistic representation that proves our story is right above every other story.
Yeah, which at the end of the day is a very sort of man-made sort of thing, if you think about it.
And not particularly spiritual. It's very materialistic.
No, it is a very materialistic thing to do, and it's sort of, and if you look at it, you'll probably find it's a very Western thing as well.
So let's carry on with let's have a look and carry on with the the True Cross. Let's have a look at this relic of the True Cross having not that strength of belief in a religion. I suppose for us, even Paul, even though you've got that belief system there, for us it's hard to imagine having that faith in an object.
See, the Christians have done it for centuries. They've always put their faith in symbols, and to have a relic is just another offshoot of the symbol. I can't fathom why Christianity decided to have the cross as the main symbol for their religion, because at the end of the day, that's something that their idol died on.
It's the symbolism of sacrifice.
Yeah, but I still, if my religious idol died on something, I'm not sure I'd want that as the main focus for my religion. But they've also got they adopted the fish, didn't they, as a symbol? I think that would have been more apt. They had other symbols as well, but
but a
throughout
fish,
history, yeah.
When you're focusing your, I don't know, it's one of those, isn't it? It's a weird one. When you look at it, but it is about that. He sacrificed himself for us, for humankind, to prove a point. Well, it's a rather big proving a point, really, but that's what he did. So I don't know. Anyway, there's hundreds of pieces of this apparently true cross that are around there, and I don't know. where do we go with this? The largest piece of the true cross of Christ is actually in the holy monastery at that place called Zeropotamo.
Yeah.
Here we go. Pronunciations, everybody.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. Glockenspiel, I say. It looks like Glockenspiel, doesn't it? No, spelt with an X.
Zeropotamo, I don't know how you would
Yeah.
say that. 13 pieces of the true cross are treasured. They have 4 large pieces in ancient reliquaries and 9 small pieces that are housed in reliquaries with other relics of saints. So they didn't just have like one relic. That wasn't good enough for their church. They had lots of bits of this cross as well as other bits of other saints as well.
Other bits and pieces, yeah.
They think it was originally one large piece that was donated to them.
Yeah.
But that they broke it up for some reason.
Yeah, because all the priests were like, I want a bit of that.
And it has
Can I
got...
have a bit?
Yeah, probably.
It just gets chipped.
Yeah, probably. And it has got, apparently, a hole that they say was created by one of the nails that Christ's body was pierced with.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a bit of a bone of contention as well, whether or not he was actually nailed or whether it was tied.
Well, this is the thing, when you look at the history of crucifixion, that, again, pulls it into, it's questionable, isn't it? Because even the way they say he was crucified in the Bible is not really how they used to do it. But then, I suppose they used to do it in whatever way they wanted to. And I think with him and the sense of feeling about that particular crucifixion, it was to inflict pain more than method of crucifixion. How much mocking and pain can we put onto this person that's actually gone through? When you look at that whole story, what the man, if he was real and he went through that process and he had the flogging and then they decided to crucify him, it was about totally trying to break him, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And they didn't, and that's the point. Anyway, that's a totally different story. A totally different thing, and quite paranormal in its own right. But let's keep on focused on this, because I actually, just one last point on this one. Isn't this right? We're talking relics, and we've gone away and we've looked into relics and different types of relics and where they are and the history of them and blah, 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 blah. We haven't actually even got that far yet, and we're 45 minutes into the show.
That's
and
right.
This is the passion it creates. This is the questions. This is isn't this what it's about? Isn't this what anything we talk about in regard to belief and faith and spirituality should raise discussion? And that's what these things do. They raise that level of communication where we can look at it and go, okay, so, it's a figure in a book that was written because of this, blah, blah, blah. Well, this through history, we can do that. The importance of it is what's in its importance, not the fact of whether it's real or not. Exactly what you said right at the beginning. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. It's the what it creates around it.
Yeah, you can see, and this is why possibly churches were quite eager to acquire a relic, because it would bring people together, and perhaps back in medieval times you would have had people around these various shrines, sort of discussing perhaps things we are discussing here. Who knows? Who
knows? But this piece that we're talking about at this monastery of whatever word it was that I couldn't pronounce is actually encased in a pure gold. They've encased it. So they can displace the entire piece, which actually is probably quite a good idea, because it could be deteriorating. It's a piece of wood at the end of the day. It does rot. It's 31 centimetres and 16 centimetres wide. Okay, It's 320 grams, so we're not talking massive.
It's not big at all. But I was looking at pictures of these reliquaries, and they are quite works of art in themselves.
To create something that astonishingly elaborate for a piece of wood, effectively, the belief in that piece of wood being, you can imagine, like when we do spell work, you talk about intention. When how much intention has been put into that? That's phenomenal.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
certainly a lot of time, effort, and design, and a lot of thought has gone into just making the receptacles for these relics. You know.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
Hmm.
When you think about it. But it only comes out a couple of times a year.
Yes, they parade it around, don't they? I think the main one actually stays in the church. That doesn't travel, but I think the other one they actually take into the village once a year, don't they, for it to be venerated. And I think it's associated with a few miracles that have gone on in the village over the centuries. So, yeah, it's certainly a big event.
That's in the village of Carassa in Greece. That one is. Now, the second largest pieces of the true cross of Christ is, again, almost entirely encased in gold, apart from a small section which has been left open so you can see it's a bit of wood, basically. And this piece has been taken out of Mount Athos when requested by various people and metropolises. They've wanted to have a look at it, and they've allowed that. But the thing with this one, and this is another thing that comes up, fragrance. This one excludes a faint fragrance, which apparently is something special.
Yes, I wonder what the actual fragrance is. I mean, sort of, could it be sort of
Pine.
yeah, pine resin?
Hence, when they go through the town, they have palm leaves.
But this special scent has been we've looked at religious things before. We've looked at stigmata before now. We've looked at we've looked at relics. We've looked at the breath of the saints or the body of the saints. They seem to emit this perfume, and it's not unlike anything anybody's ever smelt before. They say it's not natural. It's not a natural smell, but it is very sweet. It's a nice smell, not a nasty smell.
Right.
And it is it evokes, because smells can evoke emotion, it evokes reverence and faith, and it reverence hope. It brings that out of what, when you smell it, it's just, you can't deny what that is. It's the smell of...
No, but as I said, it
sacred.
also, again, brings you a little bit more closer because it's using your senses. Not only have you got something physical, now you've got something you can smell as well.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a fair bit of the paranormal in that, because you think sort of paranormal sort of smells are very common. There's sort of like in sort of like investigations and stuff like that. I mean, how often do we sort of go out and stuff? And it probably is a smell that will sort of will be the first thing you notice.
It's normally flatulence, I think.
But isn't it
Especially
strange,
going out
though?
with you, yeah.
But isn't it... Oh, God, now, boys, now. I know it's hot, but let's not get carried away with each other. But coming from a piece of cross that's mainly encased in gold, a piece of wood, sorry, that's mainly encased in gold, to have this fragrance you've got to say that's quite unusual.
Well, yeah. I don't know quite what more to add on that, having never smelt it. I mean... No,
neither have I.
So you've only got what the people actually say, haven't you?
That's what we've only ever got. It's only what people say, isn't it?
Yeah, but the belief's there, so...
Belief is there.
It's there. So who are we to take that away from?
But people have got belief that this piece of wood actually created a great miracle that happened in the 18th century. Now, the village was plagued by a deadly disease which apparently affected all of the inhabitants, not just one or two of them, but all of them. And the high monastery of Zeropotamu was contacted by the villagers, and they asked them, please bring the true cross to the village. We need blessing. We need a blessing. We're being ravaged by this deadly disease. And the fathers, they did do that. They brought it with great procession to the village, and they walked around the village with it, and the village was saved, and the disease seemed to be eradicated. Miraculously, it just seemed to disappear.
They all cheered. Yeah.
And it was like, woohoo! This is God! Thank you so much, Jesus! Or God, or whoever. Thank you! Was it a belief that just seemed to eradicate the disease? Who knows? But it does, again... That's a collective belief system that artifact is going to be the cure for what they're going through, that conflict they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very strong belief system.
Yeah, I'll totally agree. Yeah.
And how desperate must you be to sit down in your village hall with your other village leaders and go, right, we've got to do something. What do we do? Any ideas? I know. Let's see if we can get a bit of the Holy Cross to come and see if we can get it blessed. Bless our village. Oh, yeah, that sounds like a plan of action.
Yeah, right. Let's get in contact with the monastery.
Can't do any harm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. But
and then all of a sudden it got fixed, and that's what they believed.
And even the most
again,
non-belief... Sorry.
It was just a product of its time, really, isn't it?
True, but then having said that, say this was happening in this day and age, right? And there was a place that was being absolutely ravaged by a disease. Funny that. And, you know, they wrote to the Pope and said, we need a holy relic that's going to help. And he did. He released a holy relic, and it does a tour of wherever the world may be.
Yeah, but then we don't know what this disease was. It could have just been the flu, which would have died out naturally on its own anyway. And he just gave them a relic and said, yeah, that'll cure you. What, you know, at the end of the day, they're going to believe that. And it's no different, as I said to you countless times before. If I gave you a rock that I've just picked up off the floor and said it keeps tigers away, can you see any tigers? No. Well, it's done its job then, isn't it?
I would only believe it had done its job if I'd actually had a tiger that was ravaging me at the time. You know, to be fair, if there was no tigers to start with, and then you gave me the rock and said you'll have no trouble with tigers.
If a tiger's ravaging you, eventually it's going to stop and wander off to the next bloke anyway, isn't it?
Oh, you never know.
Yeah.
I don't know. No,
it's going to happen, whether he had that relic or not.
But even in a community, you'll have levels of belief. You'll have people that aren't that worried and just do it out of duty. You'll have people that are like completely, like besotted and completely bought into it. You'll have levels. So you haven't got a uniformed belief system across any community, have you? But then to have an effect, coincidental, possibly, I'll take that point. But didn't Carl Jung turn around and say there's no such thing as coincidence?
Yeah, but then you're looking at a time where things were changing big time anyway, and, you know, there could have been sceptics and thought, bit of the cross, what a load of old rubbish, that ain't going to solve nothing. People are still going to die. And then when it come to it, they got the relic, and then everyone started getting better, and he's like, bloody hell, that works. You know, and it could just be as simple as that.
It could be. Who knows?
And I'm going with that explanation.
And on that explanation, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to actually have a look at the Holy Foreskin. On that note, have a listen to this.
Looking good, feeling good, and making a world of difference, one bottle at a time. Care for your hair and the planet with Elvive from L'Oréal Paris. All our shampoo and conditioner bottles are now made from 100% recycled and recyclable plastic, except the caps, which we're still working on. Together, we can save 5,000 tons of virgin plastic a year. For more information, see l'oreal-paris.co.uk/Elvive Recycle.
At Ring, we reinvented the doorbell. And now we're changing the way you look at whole home protection with Ring security cameras.
Wait, Ring does cameras too?
That's right. And they're so versatile, you can put them inside or outside, wherever you need them most.
Handy.
Ring cameras let you see, hear, and speak to anyone inside or outside your home. And you can control them all from the Ring app to keep you and your family connected and protected.
Now that is smart.
Ring. Smart security made simple. Learn more at ring.com.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, Is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Now, before the break, we were exploring the concept of holy relics and went down many different avenues in exploration of that one. Now, we looked at the True Cross and went around that topic quite a bit in various discussions.
I just want to put it out there. This direction we're going in, this hole that we're going down, I really don't want to go down.
Well, this does bring us to the story of Jesus' circumcision, which is a Roman Catholic thing, right?
No.
Oh, no, Jewish, sorry. It's a Jewish, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was apparently performed 8 days after his birth on January the 1st, allegedly. Right? Okay, now, this is a physical remain of Jesus, if it exists, right?
Yes.
Actually, physical proof of a man is circumcision. Yes. Now, I don't even know where to start with this one. The concept of this one is just incredible. I don't actually know why they do it in the first place. But anyway, what they do, not many people spoke about this because the Roman Catholic Church had decreed excommunication on anyone who did so. So I do apologise to any Roman Catholics that are listening to this right now because we are going to discuss this. However, a guy called Robert Palazzo did his research and he wrote an article called The Veneration of the Sacred Foreskin of Baby Jesus.
Oh.
But he did offer some interesting details about this relic.
Which were?
Pardon?
Which were?
Well, he notes that the I don't even know what this word is. Apocryphal Gospels, such as the first Gospel of Baby Jesus, was actually written sometime before the 6th century, which actually describes how the foreskin was kept and passed down from generation to generation.
Right, okay. There's a bit of a memento there, isn't it?
Something to be proud of, I feel.
Yeah.
This could be the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, the Holy Foreskin of Jesus. By the 11th century, several churches in Europe said that they had the Holy Foreskin. Basically, the story goes that Jesus' mother Mary kept the foreskin along with the umbilical cord, gave it to Mary Magdalene. Then we jump forward several centuries to the time of Charlemagne, when an angel gave the relic to the emperor. From then, it went from place to place, including Rome, and then it was sent to Catherine of Valois in England so that it would bring good fortune and a pregnancy to her marriage with Henry V.
Oh, so we had it over here as well?
Apparently we have. It's travelled, this foreskin. He was able to find at least 31 churches in Europe that claimed to have the Holy Foreskin sometime during the Middle Ages. These included Paris, Antwerp, Boulogne, Compostela and Toulouse.
Oh, right, okay.
Is this like the whole Ouija board planchette thing? So you look through it and you see Jesus on the other side?
I have no idea. There's a lot of commentary about this. A lot of it's very negative, right? Anastasia Sinata, which is a 17th century writer, actually has said we can be sure that having voluntarily submitted himself to the act of circumcision, just that point, right? He voluntarily submitted himself to the act of circumcision. Hold on a second. How old was he?
8 days.
But he voluntarily submitted himself to the act.
Okay.
Well, he didn't run away.
Well, no, he certainly didn't. They will have kept his foreskin so that it could be restored to his body following his resurrection, thus allowing him to ascend to his heavenly Father with a perfect body, entire and intact. Clearly, that didn't happen if several churches and a procession of this foreskin has gone on.
Well, yeah, seems to have gone everywhere, doesn't it?
Yep. Czech reformer John Huss added, to teach that Christ's foreskin survives is just as foolish as to teach that Christ's head survives, cut off from his body.
Yeah, so there's obviously a sort of a bit of a religious debate here because the Bible does actually state that Christ was resurrected to heaven, or when he ascended to heaven, he was in full bodily, it was his full body, which obviously would have entailed
Included his foreskin.
foreskin. Yes.
See, now, don't some mediums claim that people that have had like a limb removed or whatever, when they're in spirit form, they do appear as full body, including the limb that wasn't there in life?
Oh, I don't know. I've heard of phantom limbs.
I have heard
but
that from certain mediums, and they're basically, because could be possibly a form that you would recognise them in, so they would come back as full bodied because that's how they are now. If that makes sense, it is their whole energy and not part of the energy.
Oh, right.
But with you, that don't make sense, does it? Because if you lost a limb,
Yeah.
right? So, say for example, our friend Mark, he's got his leg missing from the knee down. We know him as having that problem, that disability.
If he ever came back as a spirit,
He would never come back with that leg intact. He would never show himself
He
to me
would.
with his intact leg.
possibly he might not show himself like that because that's how we know him. But to someone else, he could have full body.
I could understand it if it was, say, a soldier who died and in their death they'd lost, they got blown up, for example, and lost a limb, to their spirit appearing in full form because their relatives would never know the injuries that were sustained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that.
For somebody who's already got it in life that we know, like, so we know Mark incredibly well with this disability. Not that he ever sees that as a disability. It's never stopped him from doing anything. I don't quite know how to word that correctly, to be fair, but that thing, that no leg, but we know him with that.
Yeah,
no leg.
I mean, no,
he's not going to
doesn't...
then appear in spirit to me with a full body, because I would go, you're not Mark, because I know Mark, and Mark didn't have a leg.
It has been reported that. And I actually know someone that's seen an apparition of, I think it was their nan, and she had one leg removed. And when she came back as a when she see her as a full-bodied apparition, she had both her legs, and she was basically there to say, look, I'm fine. I'm all right over here. Look, I've got my leg back. I'm fine.
What age was she when she lost her leg?
I don't know. I don't know the whole ins and outs of the whole story.
Because if she lost her leg...
She did lose a leg.
If she did lose, say, for example, she lost her leg late in life, but the majority of her life she was full-bodied...
I think that's probably what the case was. I think it was an illness or something that she had to have her leg removed.
Then, I can understand... Then I could understand the spirit coming back, going, look, I'm fine now, I've got all my bits back.
But then
what I mean?
That argument would... Cool. You could also use that argument for any person without a limb or had something cut off.
No, because I would say with Mark,
spirit has still got the energy to be able to show themselves in a full body
form.
Yeah.
But like I say, if you're there, if you're coming through as a spirit to prove validation, and the person, say, was born without a limb, which happened a lot, you think of the thalidomide and all that that went on, then you would only recognise them as being true as with that problem, with that limb missing.
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So I suppose when we go back to Jesus, sort of thing you check, is it?
Not really, no.
No, I can't say that anyone's ever going to see a full-bodied apparition of Jesus and go, whop it out, mate. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. Have you got a foreskin or do you not? Was that real? That's so real.
Yeah.
But this particular relic, shall we say, is actually fraught with bats. Crazy, batshit crazy stories. I mean, the mystic Catherine of Siena wrote in her letters of getting a wedding ring from Jesus that he made from his foreskin. I mean, I wouldn't accept that as a wedding ring. I'm just saying.
Really?
I know. That's just too weird for my liking.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And an even stranger story. You think that one's strange? Agnes Blaine Beckin revealed to her confessor. Oh, this is just psychologically. This is just well, Freud would have a heyday, is all I'm going to say. She began to think about the foreskin of Christ and where it may be located. And behold, soon she felt with the greatest sweetness on her tongue a little piece of skin, like the skin of this just is gross, skin of an egg, which she swallowed. After she had swallowed it, she again felt the little skin on her tongue with sweetness as before, and again she swallowed it. This happened 100 times.
Yeah, right.
Oh dear.
Not even going to go there.
Where's this show going?
But, I mean, come on now, people.
Down
This
the
is,
road, isn't it?
we are talking about something that is incredibly personal, an incredibly, incredibly personal right for the Jewish faith, you know.
Where was she when she had that experience?
Where was she?
Yeah.
I don't know where she was. Doesn't say where she was.
Okay.
Now, the whole matter of Jesus' foreskin was actually brought before the Pope Innocent III, and he was asked to decide whether or not the foreskin, an umbilical cord relic, was true. And the Pope replied pretty much like Paul has said, rather than attempt rash answers to such questions, it is better that they be left entirely to God.
Well, that's dodging the point, isn't it?
That's a pure politician answer there, right?
Yeah, it's very political there, yeah.
Kind of see his point, though.
Yeah.
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Is it real? Is it not real? Of all the relics in all the world, you're focusing on the foreskin of Jesus. Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he probably replied the best he could to that one.
I think that was probably the best answer. Now, to us sitting here, even thinking about something so personal that may or may not have been cut off Jesus, for me it feels a bit sacrilegious to even be thinking about that or wanting to prove that point. But the last place that publicly shown the Holy Foreskin was actually in the Italian village of Calcutta. Not Calcutta, Calcutta, which is 30 miles north of Rome. And the locals claimed that the relic had been there since 1527. And on January the 1st, the day of the circumcision, it would be taken out of the local church and paraded around. In 1983, it mysteriously disappeared. Now, where it was kept... oh, dear. It was apparently in a shoebox underneath the priest's bed.
Well, there you go. That's where you keep all sorts of things in the shoebox and under your bed.
As you do.
Probably one of the holiest of holy relics.
Exactly. It was kept in a shoebox, everybody. That in itself says everything to me. Now, the locals actually believe that it was the Vatican that was responsible for taking away this particular relic. Well, if it is what it says on the tin, the foreskin of Jesus, and they were keeping it in a shoebox, I don't blame the Vatican for taking that away from them. They're not exactly revering it, are they? They're not, that is the foreskin of Jesus. We're not talking about any old person.
To be fair, it is going to be a protection thing as well, because if you had it in a big box, all gold and glassy, you could see what it was and made it look really nice, someone will nick it.
Well,
if it was just an old dusty, booted about shoebox, chances are the bloke that just, whoever's nicking it, just look around and go, no, there's nothing important in there because it's crap. Let's have a look over there in that box.
I wonder what sort of shoebox it was, a Nike or a Adidas?
Adidas.
Oh, my lordy lord.
Dr. Martens.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Oh, well, therein lies the story, doesn't it?
Indeed.
I do hope to God it was like the ultimate in shoeboxes. Oh, dear. Now, let's talk about one
it
of
could
Paul's...
be a Hermes one with the boots with the wings on it.
The shoebox. I can't believe that. The foreskin of Jesus ended up in a shoebox in a tiny little village called Calcutta in, oh my God, I don't know. Who knows, right? But I do agree with the Pope on this one. Does it matter?
Yeah.
If he was circumcised or not?
It does to the Jewish.
Obviously it does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know on that one. But anyway, let's talk about relics of saints. Let's get off this topic of foreskin.
Yes, let's get off.
And stop Paul from cringing every time I mention the word foreskin.
I think the proper term for it was Nick Crepis.
What? A foreskin?
Crepis. The foreskin's called the Crepis, I think.
Oh, you learn something new every day.
But anyway, you carry on.
Relics of the saints.
Yeah.
Let's get on to something a little bit more gory.
That's better.
Yeah, let's get back to...
Let's talk about head. The head of St. John the Baptist.
Yes.
Baptist.
Not just the foreskin, the whole head this
We
time.
want the head. 4 locations claim to have the murdered saint's head. Four heads.
4 locations, 4 heads. Well, yeah, sounds like a girl I used to go out with. It's not that unknown.
No, okay. In Damascus, Syria, the Umayyad Mosque was built in the 8th century AD on the site of a Christian church named for John the Baptist, and his head is said to be buried in a shrine there.
Oh, right.
Okay, so that's first place. A skull identified as the head of the John the Baptist is on display at the Church of San Silvestro in Capita in Rome. I have no idea if I'm saying these words right. I would just like to put that out there.
Well, you're doing right. You're doing
well, dear.
Built to house artefacts from the Roman catacombs. If it's from the Roman catacombs, not being funny, it could be anybody's head.
They've got quite a few to choose from down there.
Exactly.
No, they've got a room just called John, and everyone who's called John just goes in there.
Yeah, who knows, right?
John.
There is a 13th century cathedral in Amiens in France that was built specifically to house the head of John the Baptist, which a crusader supposedly built back from Constantinople. Constantinople's got a lot to answer for, is all I'm saying. In 1206. So there's one there. And in Munich, Germany, the Residenz Museum includes a John skull amongst a number of relics collected by Duke Wilhelm V of Bavaria. And with the Pope's permission in the mid-16th century, the cathedral was built as a shrine for it.
All right.
Okay. And a replica of the Baptist's head is still kept there. Although the original was actually stolen in the 19th century. In the 19th century, a lot of things got stolen, you notice.
There was
a lot of things.
Kept in a shoebox and under the bishop's bed.
Yeah.
The Vatican's got a lot. I reckon the Vatican went, right, we need to just start clearing up all these holy relics that are around. We need to start nicking stuff. Oh, dear. In addition, there are museums and monasteries in Istanbul, Egypt and Montenegro, amongst other locations, that apparently have other body parts belonging to John the Baptist, including his right arm and his right hand. Now, that's the hand that he allegedly baptised Jesus with.
I see.
So this poor man, after death, got chopped up into bits and got sent around the globe. But this is where we go back to the medieval relic hoikers. Market sellers of relics, isn't it?
Yeah, especially around the time of the Crusades, they were coming back with all sorts of curios, weren't they? And passing them off to be whatever. John the Baptist's head, I should imagine a skull was not that uncommon to come by back in the day.
Any skull. I could probably get hold of a skull today and go, oh, it's John the Baptist.
Yeah.
Or Jesus.
Well, I know where we can get skulls from.
Yeah.
But I just need, obviously, the money to buy one, because they are real ones. And, yeah, I could quite easily say, oh, that's John the Baptist's.
Well, yeah.
We could do that. We have the technology, we shall do that. But, yeah, I mean, that's what this smacks for me, is it could be any old skull, really. They don't really know, do they? But at the end of the day, John the Baptist, again, sacred, holy figure in religious history.
So he would be like a secondary. You've got Jesus as anything connected with Jesus is the king of relics, but you've got somebody very closely associated with Jesus.
Yeah, this is his association relic.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the cross would be an associated relic.
Yeah.
Whereas the foreskin is just a holy relic, because it's actually physical holy relic.
Yeah.
But associated holy relics seem to be more revered, Well, they're more obvious. You can get them. I suppose.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Whereas,
you
like,
can pick up anything and say this is associated with someone,
Mm-hmm.
but there's got to be a limit on well, as obviously was with heads, you know, and with foreskins as well, you know, sort of how many churches of 13, you know, and there is a limit you can sort of tout body parts around.
But
Surely.
I do think that goes down to the communication. See, now you'd never get away with that because the communication between people is just astonishing. The ability, whereas back then you only had like travelling salesmen and people like that would actually be able to tout. You wouldn't like the priest from the church in France wouldn't talk to the priest in the church in Munich. Do you know what I mean?
No.
You wouldn't have that communication going across. So. And if they did, it would take months and months.
That's right.
You know,
and by then, the people around the relic, I mean, it would have built up its reputation. So regardless, you know, the people that believed it was, and that's all they needed, you know, the pilgrims to actually go and see it.
Yeah, because, pilgrims, it's money, right? Pilgrims equals money.
Yeah.
People coming into the church. And the church back then, incredibly powerful, incredibly rich.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the main reasons of the Reformation in the UK, wasn't it? It was because every time someone died, then if they didn't have a person that they were going to leave it to, then it went to the church. And the king was like, no, that's mine. I want all that money from that estate that's coming in, not the church. Yeah. And the church was too powerful, which is one of the reasons he wanted to break it, and successfully did so.
Yeah.
The fact that they wouldn't give him a divorce was like the icing on the cake, really, with that one. But he wouldn't give good old Kingy what you want. Anyway, that's a whole different story.
Yeah,
let's talk about more macabre stuff. Let's talk about the blood of Saint Januarius.
Yeah, this is quite a famous one, isn't it? I mean, I've actually seen sort of. I was watching a YouTube video of this earlier where they go through the ceremony of sort of when his blood turns fluid. I mean, it's quite dramatic, really.
I actually think I want to be sainted. What would you have to do to be sainted?
You have to have 2 miracles asserted to you during life. So after you've sort of passed away, you know, I think the Catholic Church, you're beatified means you're put up for sainthood, and then the Catholic Church do an investigation. They go around and sort of talk to people that knew you and, stuff like that, and they tell their stories. And I think you have to have 2 miracles associated, and then you can become a saint. But that's not that straightforward. I mean, I don't believe Joan of Arc became a saint till something like 400 years after her death. So that was quite a long process. So it's not so it's not a given that you will become a saint.
So
they need to make me a saint then, because I performed a few miracles.
I was just thinking that myself. Mother Teresa, would she be a saint?
I think she's been beatified, which is the process of becoming a saint. I don't think she's actually a saint. Don't quote me on this. I will say I don't actually know. I don't think she is, but she's gone through the beatification. They've identified 2 miracles, I believe, which they're looking into.
It's a miracle that she survived this long, I think, is one of them. Anyway, worshippers in Naples gather every September to see this miracle in the southern Italian city's cathedral. The dried blood of Saint Januarius, he was martyred in the 4th century, AD, is preserved there and has an organic connection with the city's well-being. So every September and on 2 other days in the year, the red powder liquefies and becomes living blood. Have they tested that?
Well, it's in a sort of like a glass ampule, a sealed sort of glass sort of vial, and I don't think they have. Again, it's another one of these relics which they don't sort of let people tamper with.
Convenient, isn't it?
Well,
Is it real living blood? Is my question. Well, if it does, the city is safe from volcanoes, earthquakes, and plagues. It would be interesting to see if last September it liquefied. If it did liquefy, has the city been safe from corona? Because that's pretty much a plague, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? You think that would qualify.
You think so? It'll be interesting to see. Anyway, Saint Januarius, or San Gennaro in Italian, is the patron saint of Naples. Now, he was a bishop in the city in the 3rd century, and his bones and blood are preserved in the cathedral as relics. And he was believed to have been martyred during the Diocletian persecution.
Oh, right.
The miracle is locally accepted and known, and has not been the subject of an official church recognition. So they haven't actually, as a church.
Oh, right. So the Vatican have not sort of recognised this. So it's more sort of like a local sort of tradition.
Yeah.
Apparently, this liquefaction happens 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
September the 19th, the Saints' Feast Day, the Saturday before the first Sunday of May, and December the 16th, which is the anniversary of the 1631 eruption of Mount Vesuvius.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the mass, this powdery red coloured thing that's in the
vial.
Vial.
Yeah.
Thank you for filling my word in there. Yeah. It's in now. And it becomes what they say is blood.
Mm.
It did not liquefy in 2016 in December, but nothing bad happened, right? Now, Monsignor Vincenzo de Gregoria, who's the abbot of the Chapel of the Treasure of San Gennaro, said actually it was a sign that Catholics should pray rather than worry about the lack of the miracle, what the lack of miracle could mean. The worry there, and this is psychological again, the worry there is it didn't liquefy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is going to be something bad that happens.
Yeah.
But as a collective, the belief system in this relic could have created something bad to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the priest is just sort of saying, edging his bet, saying, well, basically just go away and pray harder and everything will be all right.
Exactly.
Mm.
And of course it was. And everything was all good with the world.
But it doesn't say if there was a calamity. It doesn't say whether or not there was something bad. I assume not, being as it said not.
Is there a time period? I mean, I know it said it was 2016, but could that be a premonition sort of thing to say COVID's on its way?
Or has it liquefied since?
Yeah, because this ceremony is conducted 3 times a year.
3 times a year, yeah.
So, yeah. So you've had a few since, so...
Has it actually been witnessed liquefying, or is it just a different vial?
Or is this... It's just like... This reminds me of Groundhog Day, when they say if the hog comes out, then spring's going to be, I don't know, late or something, isn't it? It reminds me a bit of that, this one. Again, it's a folklore belief system in something that... And is there a natural reason why this liquid, this powder liquefies? Maybe it isn't blood if it hasn't been tested. Can we be sure that it is even blood? I don't know of any element that would react that way. And if it's in a sealed vial, then the external influence wouldn't influence the composition of the chemical compound of whatever it is that's in there.
I've actually seen video of this actually sort of turning to blood, and it's not very. It's very like sort of treacle when it does sort of go. It doesn't go into like a runny liquid like you expect, full blown blood. It sort of just turns into like sort of like a treacle, which sort of begs the question of, is it actually blood or some other composite?
It's very old blood, and blood does coagulate.
True, yeah, but
who knows, right? How the blood got into the vial in the first place is the question that nobody's asked, is what I would say.
Yeah.
What do I know? I don't want to be too cynical about Holy Relics in case I get the wrath of God on my back.
Yeah.
No one wants the wrath of God on them. Right, so let's talk about Saint Anthony even, not Sir Anthony. It sounds like a knight of the realm. Let's talk Saint Anthony's 800-year-old tongue.
Yep. He had a lot to say, that's why
He probably had a lot to say.
He definitely did, and he had a depth and beauty to his preaching. Saint Anthony actually passed away of edema in 1230. I don't know what edema is.
Paul?
Any ideas?
I think it's isn't it a blood clot that explodes? Yeah, I think it's like a blood clot that builds up the pressure and then it eventually explodes.
Oh, very nice.
Oh dear.
I could be wrong, but I can't remember.
Well, he died of that in 1231 and was buried in a small church in Padua in Italy. Now, that's what he asked for. That's what he got. He was actually canonised shortly after his death, and the body was exhumed 30 years later to be reburied in a proper basilica that was constructed in his honour, which was over the original church's site. Okay, so he's still in the same place. They built a new, beautiful, churchy basilica place and went to rebody him, so they exhumed him. His body had completely decomposed, as you would expect, right?
Yeah, after 30 years.
However, his tongue was in shockingly good condition. It's actually said to have glistened, appearing as though it was still alive. Oh, this is gross. It's just gross, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, this was considered to be proof of his gift of preaching and his eloquence at spiritual sermons, and the tongue was separated from the remains, oh my God, along with the saint's jawbone. This is sacrilegious, surely. You're going to you're
What a
ruining...
job.
I know. Oh my God, look at the tongue. It's glistening. It must be real. He's a great eloquent person. Let's take it out. Oh, Jesus. Along with the saint's jawbone and left forearm, as you do.
Well, yeah, you might as well make a good job of it.
You know, it's permanently preserved in reliquaries for veneration within the basilica. The body ain't good enough. Let's take it out. Why do people do this? That to me is, again, that's sacrilegious, surely, to the person. How inappropriate.
Well, I can understand them moving the whole body to be reinterred in a church dedicated to him.
Yes.
But then to dismember bits of it and sort of have it, I should assume they're above his tomb, so there's half of him in the tomb by the sounds of it, and half of him out of it.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the case. I don't know. These people have weird. Why they think it's I don't get it. Anyway, Anthony himself was actually a Franciscan friar of Portuguese descent. But he had chronic health issues and a sickly appearance, and spent most of his priesthood secluded in a rural hospice in Italy. It wasn't until a visiting group of Dominican friars arrived, and Anthony was actually called to preach, basically, impromptu. Yeah,
oh, right.
We've got to give a sermon. No one's prepared enough in here, Anthony. You're a good talker. Up you get, you're up. And that's how come they discovered his power of speech, his oratory eloquence, shall we say. His tone of voice was captivating when he spoke. So whatever he said or whatever was absolutely captivating. But we know people like this even now. They're good storytellers. Yeah. They captivate people with what they say, right?
Absolutely.
The power of auditory is quite... You get a good storyteller and you're there, aren't you?
And if it's got a good voice as well, it makes a massive difference. He probably didn't come out and go, well, today's speech is...
He's a big type of butch gladiator type bloke.
Well, he might not have been like that, but he had a good voice, basically, and it becomes hypnotic, doesn't it, if someone's got a good voice?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been told I've got a good voice.
That's why you do radio, darling.
Well, yeah, I got a face for radio.
Yeah, I was told I had the looks of radio.
And he also had a really great understanding and ability of teaching the Bible that was very impressive. So he was able to tell that story and become captivating through that. Now, he actually then went travelling through Italy and France, and his preaching was hailed as the jewel case of the Bible. Pope Gregory the 11th, or 9th, 1X, whatever that is. I always get me Rome. Is that
That'd be the
9th?
ninth.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
that'd be the 9th.
Well, I gave you both options there.
Yeah. Always go for the lower number.
Yeah, you know. Actually declared Anthony the Ark of the Testament.
Oh.
That's pretty damn impressive, right?
That is quite an honour, I should imagine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Ark of the Testament.
The Ark of the Testament, no less. Everybody. Now, his tongue still fares remarkably well. It actually doesn't look too bad. It's been on extensive tours of Europe and America. You know.
I'd love to get the T-shirt of that.
So market, gee, oh my God, oh dear, and the
With all the venues on the back.
Maybe they should start doing that. Maybe it'll increase belief system around the world if they did.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So isn't there already a big logo that's got a tongue on it?
That's the Rolling Stones?
That's the Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay, there you go. So logo.
Maybe that's where they got that from.
Yeah.
That you know, when you look at the symbology and iconography of what pop stars use, they get their inspiration from all sorts of weird and wonderful places, don't they? I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is, everybody. I have no idea. I'm just putting it out there that maybe, just maybe, who knows, right? Maybe we should phone up Keith Richards and find out where they got that idea from.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him.
I'll see him at the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it is quite common for bodies of many saints who have been exhumed after death. They've been found incorrupt.
Yes, the incorrupt bodies, and there is a couple around, isn't there?
There is a few around. In Genesis, it says, "For you are dust, and to dust you shall return." However, there are saints who have exhibited such holiness that God has preserved their bodies. Of course it's God.
Ain't going to be anyone else, is it?
Well, nothing to do with natural processes. Maybe, you know, I don't know.
Well, that's God, isn't it? If it's natural.
Yeah, it's an act of God, I'd put it down to.
Are we going to start arguing theology?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's not. Let's talk about...
We're not arguing. We're not arguing. What I say is right. That's all.
Oh, okay, Master.
Unless it's wrong, and then I'll apologise for it next week.
The infallibility... yeah.
I'm never going to live that down, guys. I would just like to say.
No, never.
Never going to live it down. That is going to be a dig. They reel out show after show now. I can guarantee it. Anyway, let's talk about St. Bernard.
It's like Richard and his Weetabix, sad boy.
Well, this is true. Let's talk about St. Bernadette. Let's go to St. Bernadette. Mm-hmm. Now
let's go St. Bernadette.
The 130-year-old body of Bernadette Soubirous is actually displayed in a purpose-built crystal coffin and is housed in a chapel at the abbey where she served as a nun.
Right.
Okay.
You can find photographs of this lady.
Isn't that where the Brothers Grimm got the idea for Snow White?
Who knows? Possibly, right? In a glass coffin and all that.
Yeah.
Now, actually, when we talk about incorruptible bodies, this is probably the most famous one that you would have seen. So, if you want to go and have a look, everybody, St. Bernadette is out there. You can find pictures of it. She was exhumed no less than 3 times, and she was found perfectly intact at each time. Now, she has a lovely face and hands that are so famous. Her face and hands are actually made of wax. Believe it or not.
Yeah, they've sort of done that to preserve, didn't they?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Because she must have started to deteriorate, so they sort of like waxed her. But considering how old she is,
it does look quite something.
130-year-old body, she ain't doing badly, right? She grew up in Victorian era in France. She was very poor. Again, and this is something actually that's quite interesting. She struggled with illness for her whole life. Now, when we talk about stigmata, which is the marks of the the crucifixion on people's
Yeah.
bodies, they're normally quite sickly people too.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah.
Now, her fame began at the age of 14 in Lourdes. She had a series of sightings of a young woman taken to be the Virgin Mary, now known as Our Lady of Lourdes or Lourdes. The apparition appeared 18 separate times, occasionally giving the girl small bits of encouragement, and most famously pointing her to the source of the healing spring waters there. Bernadette reported her sightings and her appearance as a piously innocent and a little bit simple and incredibly pretty young woman helped to fuel her reputation and spur on the repetition of her stories. I can imagine the priests had a heyday with this particular young lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately. I'm not insinuating anything there in case anybody wants to sue me. The Lourdes apparition asked for the shrine to be built at the site of the grotto. Now, this is, even to this day, it is a popular Christian pilgrimage spot. It is a place of miraculous healings and has, get this, right? You want to know money involved, 4 to 6 million visitors yearly.
Yeah. I mean, they do pack them in down there.
And
bet
there's
they didn't
belief
get much
system
this year.
for you. There's belief system for you.
Yeah. Incredible, really, isn't it?
I bet they didn't get much for this year.
Probably not, unless, I don't know. It's a miraculously healing, so you should have been all right if you went there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
All credited to the spring water. Maybe that's what we should all be drinking at the moment, is the waters of Lourdes. Anyway, several miracles turned out to be short-term recoveries or outright hoaxes, and many others were confirmed at the time, and claims do continue to this day. I think that is a pure case of belief system with that one.
Yeah.
If Bernadette herself...
Isn't it pronounced Lourdes, though, as opposed to Lourdes?
I don't know. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is, whether it's Lourdes or Lourdes.
Yeah,
because a lot of people go to Lourdes to be healed, and I think that's what you're talking about.
No, it is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought it was Lourdes.
Well, I don't think they'll be going to watch the cricket.
No, that's why a lot of people...
Just for you, I'll just call it Lourdes. All right?
Lourdes.
Okay. Well, anyway, in 1879, she died of tuberculosis, and after she joined a nunnery in Nevers. That's where she spent the rest of her life. Now, part of her canonisation process, her body was exhumed 3 times, 1909, 1919, and finally in 1924, and that's when she was moved to the crystal casket. She was officially pronounced incorrupt, but that term is a little... they played on that a little bit. Basically, the body is practically mummified. It's covered with patches of mildew and a notable layer of salts, which appear to be calcium salts. The skin has disappeared in some places, but it is still present on most parts of the body.
So they had a good look. So they went back a few times. So at least, it shows they had a process there. They probably, they sort of dug her up the first time, had a look. Thought, well, she looks pretty good, but, that still doesn't prove anything, Put her back in the ground, and then we'll go back in about 4 years' time. So it shows there is a process there, and this is obviously one of the miracles that she qualified for staying incorrupt.
Well, again, they've desanctified her body by removing a few ribs. They were sent to Rome as relics. And it was decided that the blackish colour of her face might be a little off-putting for the pilgrims, so they put the light wax over it to do that. And her new face and hands were actually designed by Pierre Imans, a designer of fashion mannequins in Paris.
Oh, right.
It's nice.
So she got a good makeover then.
Does that make her two-faced?
Ooh.
Well, I must admit, it's sort of like I was looking at other sort of pictures of uncorrupted bodies, and some of them do look pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
As opposed to this one, which they obviously have done a bit of work, as you say, with the wax, but the pictures are there on the internet, and go and have a look.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what I would say is after the first exhumation of her, which was 30 years after her death, she was actually largely intact.
Mm-hmm.
The subsequent mishandling by the nuns who washed the body caused negative results when her body was exhumed for the second time a decade later. And then obviously the third time was like really when she was still...
Yeah.
It really caused that corruption. But because the first time she was mainly incorrupt, that's why they say she's incorruptible.
Yeah.
But in this glass casket, they lay on, cloths on her and all sorts of things that they do. They change her cloths and all sorts. She is very revered, is old Saint Bernadette. And actually, if you look at pictures of her where she's got her wax covering on her, she is beautiful.
Oh, yeah, there's no denying it, yeah.
For a dead person, that is.
For a dead person, yeah. I mean, it is there is certainly a sort of air of sort of like a fairy tale look. It is the classic fairy tale image. If you were to think of Snow White, I mean, that would be it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I thought maybe like with the glass coffin, if she's supposed to be that good looking and stuff, and maybe that's where they got the idea for Snow White with the coffin. Because she was left in the woods, wasn't she, with the coffin, and the little dwarves would pay homage to her every now and again.
Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, the brothers Grimm would.
They certainly would. We can't ask them though, unless we get our EVP machine out again.
Yeah, get me Ouija board out.
Or your Ouija board. Right, let's have a look at Saint Vincent de Paul.
Yeah.
Now, I recognise that name. Why would I recognise that name?
I don't know, Richard. Why would you recognise that name?
I don't know. He's French.
French? Is there a charity or something? St Vincent de Paul?
I don't know.
Oh, well, carry on.
Yeah, you could Google it while we're talking.
Yeah. I don't know. Now, he is actually one of the most venerated figures, and his body was supposed to be so pure that it did not decay for more than 5 decades, apart from his nose and his eyes.
Oh, right.
And less holy parts, which they don't talk about because they're not appropriate.
Because they're not Jesus's.
They did not survive, apparently. Although why they were looking is just anybody's guess, right? Now, he's renowned as a symbol of compassion and humility, and he was canonised a century after his death. His followers, the Lazarists, that's where it is, carry on his charitable enterprise through their Congregation of the Mission.
Yeah.
Right.
We do know.
Now we do know.
Exactly. So, let's have a look at this one, shall we? Where are we with this one? So, they installed their congregation, the Rue de Seville in Paris. A new chapel was edified in 1817 in order to honour the founder of their community. They asked permission of Archbishop of Paris to transfer the remains of their great apostle of charity to their tiny, modest-looking church. When the vault was opened, the monks found that their beloved saint had turned their incorruptible saint had actually turned into a messy pile of bones.
Oh dear.
Not quite so incorruptible, I feel. After original attempts to get him back to his original structure. God.
That must have been a job and a half.
That's where that song emanates from, isn't it? The 5 bones connected.
Yeah. The church elders made the blasphemous but very practical decision to call in some surgeons, people who know what they're doing a little bit more, as reinforcement, and the saint once again recovered his human shape. But had some embarrassing news to announce. Souls. Some bits are missing.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. St. Vincent's dismemberment was actually done by the church itself. Previous church members had sent the saint's arms to... I'm laughing, it's terrible. Saint's arms to Africa and American colonies to help convert heretics. Finger bones have been offered as gifts to members of Parisian high society for private devotional use. Oh my Lord.
So he's like a relic for hire.
Well, it looks like we'll just chop him up and send bits everywhere, and hopefully this will get the faith going. They relocated the remains basically. And then they organised a procession of the remains of his relic in 1830. Very popular. This was. Religious parades had actually fallen out of favour after the French Revolution. But the popularity of this saint was so huge that the Archbishop saw a smart propaganda opportunity.
As you do.
Oh, yeah.
It would reinforce the authority of the church in the French capital.
And it'd be a nice little money earner to boot.
It turned out to be the last great spectacles of Catholic pomposity. That's a word for you, pomposity.
Pomposity, like that one.
Mm-hmm. The relics of St. Vincent de Paul were wrapped in black silk and dressed in sumptuous ecclesiastical garments.
They dressed.
Oh dear. The nuns were so unfamiliar with this act that they actually dropped him and actually broke one of his leg bones. Oh my God!
So even in death,
Jesus.
I'm not surprised some of him went missing. They probably kept dropping him. I thought, no, it was.
Was he the patron saint of clumsy people? Is it?
Oh dear. Now, numerous missing parts of his skeleton were actually wired with wood, like taxidermy, and wax representations, again, of his face and hands were crafted to give the relic a human presence. And this is hardly incorruptible, is it? This is hardly what you could class as an incorruptible body.
Oh, Christ, he's had more work done on him than
Cher.
Than a Hollywood star. Yeah.
And he was posed clutching to his chest an ivory crucifix from the Notre Dame treasury that had last been used to give the last rites to Louis XIII.
Right.
And now he's known as Robo Saint.
Oh God! Oh dear, bless. The remains were installed in an impressive glass and silver coffin made by Odiot Atelier, who was one of the finest goldsmiths of the era. It took the strength of 10 men and weeks of back pain to carry the silver vault around the city to its final destination.
Well, he certainly lived an eventful death, that saint, didn't he?
Yeah, it was at Notre Dame in Paris.
Right.
That's where it was. I don't know where he is now. And if it took 10 men to carry it, God knows what they did in the fire. Well, leave that one. He's a bit of a mess anyway. He'll be fine. We can resurrect him later.
We'll sort him out.
We have the
later,
technology to rebuild him. We've done it before.
Yeah, they get a song sheet out.
Oh, my
Bones
Lord.
connected to the leg bone.
Any old bone will do. Poor old, dearie me. Poor old, whatever his name was. St. Vincent de Paul. Yeah, poor old Paul. You know, what can you say about it?
And it's just come to me where I recognise that name from. There was a charity shop in the town where I live. Was a St. Vincent de Paul charity shop.
Oh.
I don't know whether he was in there and all.
Who knows? Maybe his finger
Maybe
bone
he
was.
opened it.
I don't know. Well, so guys, what do we make then of this? What are we thinking about incorruptible bodies? I think that's tosh, quite frankly.
Leave them alone.
I think certain sort of like conditions, you know, when they go to the casket and if it's airtight, a body will stay sort of pretty much intact. Yeah. But I think with St Bernadette, when they first looked at her after 30 years, she was fine. But I think they broke the seal. They must have done. There must have been an air seal. And on subsequent visits, you know, that's when the organisms got in and started to do their work. And even though not fully, you know, she did start to deteriorate after the first viewing, should we say.
No, I agree with that.
I think that's what's happened.
It's human interference, isn't it, with it? You know, at the end of the day, to find out if a body's incorruptible, you have to open it.
Yeah, you have to have a look.
You have to have a look. But the body itself is venerated for their deeds, you know, the fact of what they were. Now, when you look at St. Bernadette, you know, she had a few visions. And, okay, so that's where the story of Lourdes comes from, or Lord Dares, however you want to say it. You know, and that's why we've got such a pilgrim place now in regards to that. But again, when you start looking coldly at that, I do think that's a little bit, creepy, is all I'm saying.
I think it's supply and demand, isn't it? I think there's a lot of demand to have it exhumed to see if her body, was perfect, and perhaps they open it up and thought, just make it up a bit, sort of, yeah. And they probably said, yeah, it's incorrupted. We put her back in, and by the time sort of word got about and they wanted absolute proof, to display her publicly, that's when they probably had to do a lot of work
because it is
to keep up the illusion.
Yeah, it's an illusion, isn't it? It's faith in an illusion.
Yeah, and they probably overcooked it a bit, sort of thinking, she looks good now, and yeah. And they kept going back
last time.
Yeah, I mean, 3 times, Paul. I don't know. Ethically, should you disturb a body that's been buried? I don't know. But then it's quite common, isn't it, to open tombs of family. You'll have a family vault where several members of the family will still be put in together. So they'll open up the tomb or the vault and put the next body in to the grave. I mean, even now you can do that. You can buy a plot, can't you, where various bodies are put in.
But with family sort of like vaults and stuff, it's just a case of you're just adding another casket. You don't go in. I take it you don't go in and open up the other caskets and have a quick look to see how Uncle Albert's getting on.
True.
Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what to make of it all. Yeah, but you're a bit weird.
Yeah.
In that way, you like a bit of all this. I don't know. It's a fascinating concept, and I think whatever way you want to look at it, relics, holy relics, whether or not it's an item, whether or not it's a alleged piece of person, whether or not it's a saint, whether or not even it's, oh no, God, we came across pillars at one point as well that are holy relics. Whatever way you want to look at it, you cannot deny the strength of belief system that is attached to them. And that belief system in itself can create miracles for people. That makes them important as a part of people's psyche, and should not be underestimated. And does it give us a glimpse that shows the power of the mind? Possibly. On that note, we've actually come to the end of the show. What have we had going on? What blogs have we had up, Paul?
We have got one up. God versus Elementals has gone up, and we'll have a new blog up every Friday.
Awesome. So go over to paranormalconcept.com and check out all of our blogs. And if you want to catch up with our day-to-day ramblings and information that we find out about things, then go over to our Facebook page, Twitter page, or our Instagram page, Paranormal Concept.
Yep. We also got a website, which is, what was it, Richard?
Paranormalconcept.com.
Well done.
I don't know why you keep on asking me that. I've got it quite down pat now.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's more likely to get that wrong, everybody.
Okay, well, your test next week then.
I've already said it in the show today. Shows how much attention you pay to me. Anyway, on that note, say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
At Ring, we reinvented the doorbell. And now we're changing the way you look at whole home protection with Ring security cameras.
Wait, Ring does cameras too?
That's right. And they're so versatile, you can put them inside or outside, wherever you need them most.
Handy.
Ring cameras let you see, hear, and speak to anyone inside or outside your home. And you can control them all from the Ring app to keep you and your family connected and protected.
Now that is smart.
Ring. Smart security made simple. Learn more at ring.com.